Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. When I was a kid, my favorite television program was The Adventures of Superman. And do you remember the opening? Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And for those of us who believed, and I did believe, that was the essence of the story of America. On Friday last, I witnessed the President of the United States speaking at the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. It was a partisan political speech, and I was reminded of a conversation I had with a friend, I think he might be listening now, who said to me, "Oh no, John, you're wrong. There won't be revenge. There will be no effort by Donald Trump to go after his enemies. It's just campaign rhetoric." And in fact, at one point he said he never really said that. Well, I want now to address a simple, direct, clear fact. On Friday last, Donald Trump spoke in the Justice Department and called for revenge, retribution, and rehashing of history, which is completely wrong. And I thought to myself, what happened to truth? What happened to justice? What happened to the American way? This is a tragic moment in the history of our country. And I have a question for you. What happens if a nation, or the president of a nation, ceases to obey the law? What happens if America ceases to be a nation of law? Remember, please, that democracy is precious. And when you have a president of the United States who seems completely at odds with the essence of democracy, this country has a problem. All you have to do is take a look at the headlines from the weekend. And one of the most frustrating things for me is the fact that I am not on every single day. In fact, every single hour. And that's not ego speaking. That is simply a matter that there is so much to talk about and so much to highlight. Donald Trump has invoked a 1798 law to accelerate deportation. The Alien Enemies Act. And what did Donald Trump do with that act? Despite a court order, which the White House flippantly says didn't matter at all, hundreds have been deported despite a court order. We have a president who clearly is defying the law, and those people were not even sent back to the country from which they came. Another country was selected, and Donald Trump went right ahead and did what he wanted to do. This is profoundly disturbing and violates everything about truth, justice, and the American way. Donald Trump seems to believe he is above the law. And you know something? If he is allowed to get away with it, we will have a lawless country. I point this out because there are a whole series of things that Donald Trump has done just this last weekend, which are very disturbing in so many ways. He has decided to close 3 offices under NOAA here in California. The time of a national weather crisis from one end of the country to the other. He is allowing DOGE, something which doesn't really exist except in the mind of Donald Trump, to go through the federal government and simply, wreak havoc. And that's true. And more than that, I listened to Mark Levin on his television program over the weekend. And let me tell you, Donald Trump's allies are now ramping up their rhetoric. They are targeting the judiciary. They are saying, as Mark Levin said, they are unelected. We should not listen to the judiciary. It was a shocking display of defiance, of the American way of law. That's right, the integrity of the courts. Levin said, well, they're not even elected. Who cares what they think? I would remind Mark Levin that, in fact, the Supreme Court is not elected. They are approved by the Congress, that is, the United States Senate. It was a marvelous moment when J.D. Vance showed up for a wonderful concert at the Kennedy Center. But he was booed when he came in, and his wife was booed too, because today, on this very day, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, will preside as the chairman of the Kennedy Center. And J.D. Vance's wife is now on the board. And in fact, what we are seeing in incident after incident is Donald Trump's defiance of tradition, of law. And well, I have to tell you, I always remember the words that Benjamin Franklin uttered when he was asked by a woman outside of Constitution Hall in Philadelphia after the Constitution was concluded. Dr. Franklin, what have you given us? A monarchy or a republic? And Franklin responded wisely, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. It may sound trite, but I believe it to be true, that we are now in a struggle here in the United States to preserve American democracy. And our antagonist is the President of the United States. This is not a time to be subtle, nor is it a time to be polite. Now is the time to speak out. We must speak out now. We must speak out actively. And we must remember that America does not have a king. It has a president. That a president of the United States is bound by the Constitution. And clearly, my friends, based on what we have seen and what we have heard, this president of the United States does not respect the Constitution. Now, for some who listen to this podcast, you may say to me, well, John, what must we do? And the answer is we must work harder. We must raise our voices and speak out even more effectively. We must rely on the courts. There must be suits that are filed against this administration on so many different issues. We must organize for the election of 2024, 2026, 2028. And why do I say even for the last election? Because, my friends, there are still questions which we must answer. It was not a landslide, and we have to make that clear too. 2022 was a moment when we tried, and we succeeded to a degree. 2024, we failed. 2026, we are going to have midterm elections, and we have to be ready for those. And 2028, a presidential election. And we must draw the line. We must begin organizing now. You know, history is staring us in the eye and asking, are you going to rise to the occasion? Yes, we are battling for the future of American democracy, and we cannot fail. We must not fail. And we must keep in perspective the fact that Donald Trump continues on a rampage. Some people have been very critical of the Democratic Party, saying the Democrats should have acted with more directness, and they're attacking Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate. My answer is Chuck Schumer was right. He was correct. If what he did had not happened, Donald Trump and Elon Musk would have been able to close even more arms of our government. No, we've got to really think about what we're doing. It's not a reflex reaction we need. It's a logical reaction. And so I close today by saying this is the hour that should try all Americans' souls. We should be prepared to speak out and fight back, because what Donald Trump is doing is ripping at the very fabric of American democracy. Make no mistake, the challenge is now, and we must respond. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show. by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. So the truth, justice, and the American way can survive and prosper and flourish. If you have feedback, let me know on Facebook. You can reach me through my own email or through LinkedIn. And of course, I want to say a special thank you to Gogo Zoger, who does such a great job every day with Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'll see you tomorrow.